Hello, Gary. Welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my goodness. I am so delighted, Kismet, that we reconnected
I
last
know.
week. And now I'm seeing you again. You're such a light in my life. Let's jump into, you've got this special gift working with entrepreneurs. And I guess I wanted to start by asking you a little bit. Actually, I kind of wanted to start about asking you about your podcast because your
Okay.
podcast is called The Ownership Game.
Yeah.
And I know what I think that means. Can you
hmm
explain why it's called the ownership game and how that relates to the work that you do with entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So, my point of view is that ownership is the first step to transforming anything. We think that it's like, oh, I have to become better, or I have to learn something, or I need the right timing, or I need, something change, or I need a different tool for my business. And you can go around spinning your wheels till the end of time. But until you get an ownership of your experience, of your goals, of your interpretation about things, of the way you problem solve, you're not gonna move, or you're gonna keep repeating the same pattern. So ownership for me is the secret sauce. It's basically another way of saying personal responsibility, right? Without it being a burden, right? Without it's like, oh, I'm responsible, which is how we were kind of trained on responsibility at first. Responsibility really is power, and also responsibility is self-expression. So you get to say what that looks like for you and what that feels like for you and how that's safe for you and all those things. But ownership is really the first step. Before you can go climb a mountain, you first gotta take personal responsibility over yourself and your life. So yeah, so the idea. So we just have really great conversations exploring that topic.
Awesome. Yeah, I've definitely experienced the power of taking total responsibility in my life many times. I loved that concept when I first encountered it because it felt like it gave me a lot of control,
Uh huh. Yeah,
which I love.
for sure.
How do you see entrepreneurs maybe not owning things?
Woo! Okay. Look, here's the thing. Most entrepreneurs start a business because they have a passion, a skill set, a talent, right? I am,
A
my
branding
first.
expert, a
Yeah,
designer.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But then when you got in business, you realize that that's just one aspect of it, right? You have to learn how to sell yourself. You have to learn how to market yourself. Even though you might be really great at marketing for other people, that doesn't mean that you know how to market for yourself. Money is something that brings up a lot of stuff. Planning, systems, taxes. There's all these ways that we get confronted as entrepreneurs. Now, our brain is not wired for being confronted. Our brain is actually wired for avoiding the confrontations, for staying comfortable, for staying safe. No matter how, well intentioned you are, no matter how much you want it, you have this brain that is working against you in many ways. So, ownership over that, right? Oh, my brain works, my brain's going to try to defend itself right now. So let me let it know that it's safe, right? Let me, you know, when I used to do public speaking, I started sweating. I would start panicking. Like I would literally walk out, and I don't have any hair. So it's just like dripping down my forehead. And even owning that and going, okay, I'm going to start sweating. So I'm going to take a towel when I'm on stage. And I'm just going to go, hey guys, I'm going to start sweating. Just so you guys know, here's a towel. We're going to Luther Vandross this and it's going to be okay. That required me to get an ownership over it instead of avoiding it. And what we try to do many times in the business is we avoid the things that are uncomfortable. We kick it down the road. We don't deal with it. And it catches up. It catches up with us. It gets in the way. And you know that it's there. So now you're walking into these meetings trying to sell yourself, but the back office is a complete absolute mess and you're trying to pretend that it's not. And all that stuff gets in the way. It messes with your mindset. So ownership is really about taking responsibility for all of that. It doesn't mean you have to go be perfect. It doesn't mean you even have to do anything about it. But just the fact that you're acknowledging it, the fact that you're saying, okay, this is the way that it is, this doesn't work, I'm gonna create a plan for this. Next week is gonna be when I do this. Even that process is you taking ownership over it. And it gives you a ton of power. It really like sets you free in many ways. So ownership is a big part of being an entrepreneur,
Can you
you
give
know?
me an example of maybe a business owner you've worked with or been around who was not taking ownership of something and they didn't realize it and how it was affecting them?
Yeah, one of the most common ways, like literally 3 of my clients that I'm working with right now came to me in this situation. You're basically like waiting for the clients to come to you, right? You're okay and you sit there. And I did this too. Like when I first started coaching, my thing was like, Oprah's gonna discover me any minute. Oprah's gonna discover me any minute, and when Oprah discovers me, woohoo, I'm game. That's it. She's gonna see how amazing I am. She's gonna promote me, and everything's gonna blow up. So we're sitting there and we're waiting, right? And you might be doing things like you're posting online. You might be, putting out your newsletter, but essentially you're waiting for the customers to find you. And so a lot of the work that I do is like, okay, let's wait for some of them, but how can we go after other ones? How can you reach out in a way that may feels authentic and doesn't feel creepy for you? How can you create relationships that don't feel cold and at some point it's organic to have conversations about business or referrals? That's like a clear example, but sometimes it's just like my bookkeeping. I'm ignoring it because I don't like to deal with that stuff. And then you get to the end of the year, you're owing taxes, things are a mess. It's a mess to clean up at the end of the year, right? Because now it's like I have to sit down and go through everything. So a lot of things like that, it shows up, I think, for us all the times. Sometimes it's doing the things like I had a client that I'm working with this agency right now, and what they're doing is they're so focused on the work that's to put out the work, right? The servicing of the clients. But the problem is the servicing of the clients right now isn't sustainable because everybody's burnt out. And the servicing of the client doesn't create space for the growth of the business. And so now I can't grow the business. I need more people, but my current capacity doesn't allow me to bring more people. You have to go in there and change the way that you're working and create a strategy for the growth so that you can hire that person, so that you can handle more work, so that you can bring in more money, so that you can keep, you get this more than
Mm-hmm.
most people. Those are the kind of things that we tend to fall in patterns of avoidance, if you will, and that's where leadership comes in. And when people hear leadership, they think, oh, I need a team. I need to have, I'm like, no, no, no. I'm talking about your personal leadership. I'm talking about how you lead yourself. I'm talking about how you lead your business. Like you creating yourself as a leader while you're sitting on the toilet, while you're crossing the street, while you're meeting with a client. It's all the same. You are the same person. And bringing that type of intentionality, commitment, vision to everything that you do, when you do that, things start to flow. It just starts to create movement in your life and your business in a way that you couldn't before. So, yeah, does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure our listeners can really relate to that very common way that many small business owners, we work with 1 to 2 person branding agencies,
Yeah.
push off the responsibility. I hear it a lot. All my clients come from referrals. Sometimes people say that with pride. Oh,
Yeah.
I've never had to market. I said, well, that. Don't be
Yeah.
proud of that.
Yeah.
Like that just means you have no response. Yeah, like in your words, you have no responsibility over your business. You're just
Yeah.
like, and that maybe you've had a nice steady flow, maybe, but that's not guaranteed, and you can't rely on that. So the idea that you would just kind of like push off that responsibility and not take ownership over your business is what you're
Yeah.
saying. And also the other great parallel that I'm just going to highlight for our listeners is, because I know you're all thinking this, yeah, when you're just like focused on the work, I have so much client work, I'm not creating space to build my business, I'm not
Yeah.
creating space to do the marketing. And in our no BS world, what that looks like is we need to take the step to work on our processes and our systems, the way we deliver, so we can deliver in less time so that we create
100%.
space. That's what the no BS model is all about. It's how can we deliver this project in a lot less time and actually deliver more value, thereby opening up the time and energy to do the things that we know our business needs, like
Yeah.
biz dev and
Yeah.
marketing.
Because that work of thinking about the future of your business, it requires creativity. And creativity requires space. If you're under the gun, constantly, banging out work, it's hard to think about the vision for your business. And it's hard to think about what is the future strategic plan for your business and how many people do you need, right? Like, what's your org chart look like 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Like, I know you know what it looks like now, and that's what you're worrying about, but are you building your business towards the thing you want it to be look like? And very often we just fall into this pattern of putting out the fires and taking care of the clients, and it's fine, but to your point, it's also shackles, right? It locks us in. We don't have freedom.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So, on that note, what kind of pushback do you get when you point this out to business owners? Like, do you have some good excuses people come up with?
I I
Or
mean
or not? Nobody pushes back, maybe?
yeah, I mean, well, it's funny when you said pushback, I thought of like resistance at first.
Yeah.
So typically, if you're like hiring a business coach and you're kind of like, all right, I'm ready. And the other thing about it is, I'm really good at feeding the medicine with honey. It's one of my
Uh-huh.
talents. So I don't get a lot of like resistance,
Okay.
but how it does show up
Oh, well, then
is
teach me your ways, Gary. Tell me
how
more.
how it does show up though
Yeah.
is in I'm confused
Mm.
or I don't know. So one of the ways that our brain resists is by
Mm-hmm.
pretending that it's confused, right? By pretending that you don't really have the answer. Like people are like, "Oh, I don't know." I'm like, "Yes, you do." I always go, okay, if you had $1 million to give me an answer right now, what would it be? And all of a sudden, they get real clear on what that answer is. More likely than not, is that they don't want to say it out loud because if they say it out loud, then it's scary. Then they have to be responsible for it. Then it's confronting. So I get that in the process a lot, and usually I just give them a little gentle love with a 2x4 and go, cut it out. Let's go.
Mm.
You're here to move, so don't play games with yourself, right? But most of the time, I don't feel like I get a lot of what some people will say, I don't have time. I can't do that. And then it's like, all right, walk me through your day.
Yeah.
What
And
is
how
it that
many
you're
hours you're
doing? How
scrolling on
how are
Instagram?
you spending your time, right? And there are times that, I work with a lot of moms and there's a reality when you're a mom and all that kind of stuff. But even that, it's like, moms have all this unrealistic pressure right now of parenting and, the Surgeon General just put out a
I
warning. I don't know
saw
if you
that
heard this. Isn't that
and
crazy?
sent it to all my friends. Yes.
Yeah. So now, if you're a mom listening, the Surgeon General just put out a public health warning that parenting is now one of the most stressful things that you can apparently do on the planet, right? So there are things like that where we have to actually look at, well, how can you get creative? Is there childcare? Can you create, I always tell moms, can you create a group of moms where you just kind of co-watch each other's kids a couple days a week? Tuesdays is your turn so that I can work in my business. Those are the things where people get locked in about because they think that it has to be a certain way. The other thing I get resistance about is like, oh, I'm scared to go do cold calling. Not cold calling, I hate that, but I'm scared to do reach out or follow ups or things like that. And for me, that's a matter of doing it in a way that's authentic and finding a way that's not creepy. It's like if you're following a script and you're calling somebody that you've never met before and
Or
you don't
someone
have,
you know, because that's what suggest. I never teach people to call cold because I think
yeah,
that's the toughest one. But people resist talking to people they know.
yeah, yeah. I find that a lot of times with that is just teaching them how to naturally have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because in their mind, it sounds like something else. But when you just go, hey, Pia, I'm so excited to see you. Listen, I actually wanted to share with you what I've been doing in my business and see if it's something that you're interested in. Or if maybe you know somebody else. Do you have a few minutes to give me? Right? And all of a sudden, if we know each other, you're going to go, oh, yeah, sure. Talk to me. What's up? Right? And then it becomes a natural thing. It's not like, oh, let me take out my power presentation and do a pitch. And, I always go talk to them like they're your friend, right? Like I'm sure you follow a similar model.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we're going off on a
Yeah,
tangent about something else.
that's totally fine. It's all relevant. And also, actually, I'd love to get your thoughts on this because when I hear that, I can tell because I have this feeling too. So I know some people are at least listening hear it. They're like, oh my God, if one of like, if somebody emailed me that said, hey, I want to talk to you about my business and see if you know somebody who can help me. Maybe my immediate thought would be like, oh, I don't have time for that. Like, oh, this person just needs something from me. And the fact that you think that is why it's so hard to do that because there's plenty of people who would just be like, oh yeah, totally, you're my friend, here to help you. So I'm
Yeah,
just curious, it's
100%.
not a well thought out question, but I'm just curious, like, do you ever deal with the fact that like people are often projecting like the way they think and like maybe changing how you show up will change how you think other people will show up?
All the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it is human conditioning. You have this machine in the brain that's always trying to interpret what's happening. And so when it doesn't have enough facts, it will make up a story, right? So 100%, you're sitting there with a narrative of what you think. But this is where you also bring leadership. I'll give you an example. Going back to my example of public speaking. When I was sweating, I was thinking that I was going to embarrass myself. I was thinking that, I had to prove something to this audience, right? I was afraid that the audience was going to judge me and make fun of me. Like, that's kind of where my mindset was, which was creating that experience. I started to create a different mindset. Before I went up on stage, I would say to myself, this audience is generous. They're generous listeners who are curious about what I have to say. And that's who I started leading to. I started speaking to a generous audience who was curious about what I had to say. All of a sudden, that gives me more freedom. I'm playing around, I'm making jokes. If you ever see me speak, I like grab chairs and do things like it's. So you absolutely have everything to say about how you choose to experience something. And again, it comes back to ownership. If you're just letting your monkey brain run ragged, run wild, doing its thing, yeah, you're going to be freaking out. You're going to be having all those experiences, which are absolutely human. But if you bring leadership and ownership to it and go, okay, I got it, monkey brain, but what I'm really up to right now is leading to this group of people who are really generous. Another thing is when you're reaching out, I'll give you another example. One of my first jobs, I was an art director. Sonia used to be a designer before I was a coach. And this was back in the days when you used to have to take your portfolio around and like show it to people. And so I would have photographers and illustrators dropping in all the time, trying to show me their book. I need to see those books. I need to see what's out there. Like, I'm actually in the game of art directing photo shoots. So part of my job is to know, what photographer has great work that might be good for an upcoming photo shoot. But I'm busy and I don't have time right now. And I want to meet with you, but I can't right now. You'd be surprised how many people would never follow up with me. And some people will follow up me 2, 3, 4 times, and I would be like, yes, finally, I'm ready for you, and I'm gonna move you to the top of the line because you kept following up with me, and I freaking love that, right? So don't assume like many times you're actually doing people a favor because you have something they need. And we just talked about how entrepreneurs keep kicking problems down the road. Hello, branding is one of those things that people will kick down the road to the end of time. But the impact that the brand can make. The clarity in their sales process and in their marketing process that branding brings. The clarity of in the culture that it creates when people have a brand that's articulated. Why would you not be urgent about offering that to them, and reminding them and continuing to come? So, yeah, that comes up all the time. It's just humans being humans. But I really invite you to create a different belief for it, a different experience around it for yourself. And know that entrepreneurs and business owners, they're super busy, but they need what you got. It can make a huge difference going through that process. So don't give up on them. Like, don't just, really support them in their busyness by following up. Support them in moving up your email to the top of their list so that they can remember.
Oh my gosh, so many good things. I have so many things I want to talk about. Okay, first of all, hope I'll remember the second one. First of all, that reminds me of something that just happened the other day because I posted something about email marketing and like the importance of building an email fan club. But I know so many people who don't have email lists are so concerned and worried about emailing people too much. Because to your point of, I'm speaking to the people in the room who are generous and grateful to be here. I always like to show the opposite of that. Like if there's some curmudgeon-y person in the room, like I'm not speaking to that person anyway.
Yeah.
So let me not like make my whole mindset and ideas about what I'm talking about. Make sure I'm helping that curmudgeon-y person in the corner.
Yeah.
Like let me speak to the people who are open and like looking to receive this information. Same thing goes with your email list, right? Like the person who's like so annoyed that you're emailing them multiple times a week, like it's not hard to archive, delete an email, unsubscribe. Like none of these things are hard. Somebody who's like so annoyed with your emails probably doesn't want to get your emails anyway and are not your client. So don't email for them. Email for the people who are like psyched that you're emailing them every other day. I email my list every other day until they unsubscribe. I'm like, if you don't want to get this, unsubscribe. Like no pressure. Anyway, so I wrote this post about it. And somebody wrote on the bottom, she goes, it's so funny. I had this exact experience with your email list. I was like kind of annoyed that I kept getting it and you kept asking me to book a fit call, but then it worked and I've been booked a fit call because I need your services. So I was like, I'm totally annoyed by lots of emails I'm on, but I don't unsubscribe because I know I want to be reminded of this because I'm going to need this at some point, and this is a great way to remember it. So just to give you guys, listeners, like another perspective, especially if you don't speak on stage, like speaking on social media, speaking in your email is the same thing. Don't worry about the curmudgeon in the corner of your audience and talk to the people who are there for it, who are here for it. And the second thing I want to talk about was I love how you're talking about responsibility and leadership as it relates to your own brain and mindset, and this idea of like you're responsible for your like crazy monkey mind and all these like negative things that are happening in your head and how much it's affecting you. You're
Yeah.
actually responsible. You need to be a leader for your own brain. That is huge. Can you
Yeah.
talk to me more about like how do you help people make that transition? That sounds great in theory. Like how do you actually help people do that?
Yeah, the first step is have developing an awareness about it. One of the first things that I implement now with my clients is that I'm in my spiritual woo-woo era of life. And so one of the first things that I start implementing is meditation practices, journaling practices, checking in, body scanning. These are all things that start to teach us the ability to stop and check in and the ability to discern between a thought and that, whatever it is that you're actually up to. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's real. It doesn't mean you have to act on it, but the way that we experience it, because it's inside of our head and blah blah blah, most of us think that our thoughts are a reality and that our thoughts are, our truth, and they're not. You can't control your thoughts. Sometimes they come out of nowhere, like you're cracking a joke at a funeral and like they're random half the time, right? Again, your brain is also wired for survival, which kept us safe at one point in time. It's great. It's very valuable. Like if I'm crossing the street in New York City, I want my survival brain to be on because that requires instant reaction. I don't want to think about it. I want to just be able to move. But most of life isn't that, right? So having the awareness of that and it is huge. And we live right now in our culture where we're very reactionary. We're all attached to these things. We have devices, we have notifications, we have screens. This is frying our nervous system. It's making us more reactive. It's really making our brain be addicted to dopamine, all this kind of stuff. So the first thing you want to do is just develop an awareness, develop a practice. Once you have that, then we can start playing. Then it's about using the power of language to create whatever you want. We create through language. Human beings create through language. If you have a goal, it doesn't exist anywhere but in language. Like, oh, it's in my head, it's in my future. No, you don't have a crystal ball. You don't know what's in the future. And if I cut your head open, there's not a goal in there. It's going to be a lot of gray matter. Saying things like, I want to make more money or I want to make, $20,000 a month, that is a goal that exists in language. So language is how we interpret our experience. Language is how we create the context for the actions that we take. The moment you get that, you realize you are invincible and you have the power to create anything. And this is the best example that I teach. So I'm holding up an index finger if you are, listening. I'm holding up an index finger. In the context of body parts, I just told you it's an index finger. In the context of numbers, what is it, Pia?
It's a one.
In the context of direction,
It's up.
in the context of a computer, the tool.
It's a tool.
Right? So
Right.
same thing. I didn't even change the position of my finger. I literally
Right.
just held up my finger the same way. But when you change the language around it, you change the context. And when you change the context, you change how you interpret it. You change how you see it. You change how you experience it. The moment you get that, it's like, wow, all of a sudden you're Harry Potter. Because you can go from an audience of people who are out to judge me and scare me because that's what I experienced in the school ground, in the playground when I was a kid, to an audience of generous listeners who are curious, like authentically curious about what I have to offer, right? You have the power to create the experience that you want. It goes from my mother being an annoying, whiny person who doesn't think that I can do anything right to a mother who's really concerned for her son and worried that I'm not in her arms anymore and she can't protect me, so she feels helpless, right? You change the language around something, all of a sudden, the interpretation, the experience. And that's the game. That is the key to living a powerful life. And a lot of the work that I do with people is showing them where they're using language to create a context for themselves that doesn't give them power. I mean, it's literally what we're talking about. I'm going to bother people, right? By me sending this email list, I'm going to bother people. You change the language to, hey, there are people out there who actually need to hear this, that they're suffering, they're stuck in a loop in their business, not making the money, not having the growth they want because their brand is shit, right? And I can help them. And I can be the person that really turns that all around for them. Whole different game. All of a sudden it goes, I'm gonna bother them, to like you really taking a stand for people. One of the reasons I love working with entrepreneurs is because I am a huge stand for them. I know what it is to pour your heart into this. I know what it is to put everything into it and struggle and want it to work, and the shame and the fear and the thing that comes with that, and like the financial threat that comes with it every month, where you're like, God damn it, am I gonna be able to make payroll this month, and all of that, right? Like I get that because I've been it and I'm in it. The moment that I figured out, like, oh no, I can actually help these guys, like I am a maniac about it. I'm so passionate about it because I know what's at stake. I know what's at stake. When I work with an entrepreneur, it's not just them, it's their teams, it's their families, it's all their clients and customers, it is their families. Like the ripple effect is huge. And if you just get that the ripple effect is huge of the work that you do, you're gonna have so much more freedom around sharing it, around being an interruption, around like really standing for people to have the lives that they want, the businesses that they want. Like you're not trying to sell them a pipe dream. You're literally going like, dude, that thing that you want, I'm helping you with that. Like I'm here to support you with the thing that you said you want. Like, let's go.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And that description is just so powerful. Like, really, entrepreneurs touch so many people's lives
So
that they don't
many.
even know, right? Like, because of that ripple effect.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's just a bit of ego, right? Oh, I'm not going to send this out because I don't want to bother certain people. You're holding it back from helping all these other people, and you're stopping this amazing ripple effect.
100%.
And yeah, I mean, what a shift in mindset if you're sending it out being like, this is for all the people that are ready to have like a big aha moment today, and
Yeah.
let me give it to them.
100%. And by the way, I want to say that this process that I'm talking about, you're always managing this. It's not like I don't have to talk myself. We just reconnected at an event, right? And it was a different crowd for me. Now, I've been speaking for almost 20 years now. Like, I have a lot of mastery around this. But new audience, new event, I was nervous. Like, I was nervous. I was like, and I had to do my little thing where I'm like, all right, these guys are. I'm also used to leading to women. Most of the people that I work, that was a room full of men. Very
Yeah.
different for me, right? I don't want to sell you guys a pipe dream that you do this once and then you're done. No. What I do is teach you how to do this, and then you put this practice in for the rest of your life. We are always identifying these things that are get in our way, that rob our power, and then how do you bring ownership to that and create an interpretation that empowers you, or create safety for yourself so that you can be in a space that empowers you, in a way that empowers you. So it's not work that you do once, it's work that you continuously do in life. Now, I will say the more you do it, the more muscle you bring to it. It doesn't take that much for me to talk myself into, give myself a pep talk now.
Right. Because you're so well practiced.
Because I'm so well practiced.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that. You know what that makes me think of, actually? And you'll like this because you're a New Yorker. I don't remember when or why, but I remember hearing this concept at some point in my life a long time ago, where the practice at that moment was being on the subway and being so annoyed at somebody doing something, being horrible, right? 'Cause you see that all the time. And then thinking about, if I knew that that person's mother just died, how would that change how I feel about this? And you just say that, and immediately you feel completely different. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that person, like, I want to cry just now even thinking about that. Like,
Yeah.
the person can do whatever they want. Like, they're
Yeah.
they're in
Yeah.
pain,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And experiencing that, it's giving me chills. Experiencing that change in how you feel so immediately when you imagine that, it made me realize how much I used to be like, ugh, these people, they're like really leaning into like how bad this person is, what an asshole
Yeah.
this person is, and then kind of like carrying around that annoyance, like, then I get off the subway. I don't know this person from, Jack, and now I'm annoyed and I'm feeling negative
whole
stuff.
day.
Yeah, maybe for the whole
For
day,
the whole
right?
day.
Or then something else happens and I'm like, oh, that too, and I'm just like building this story about like, this is a shitty day that I'm having. And what I'm hearing from you is like how much you are giving away by doing that. And it's all in your head, and like, I got really, like, that changed how I saw those moments so much that like, I always think like it's the immediate thought whenever I see anything like that in the world,
Yeah.
like people being, annoying, walking down the street, whatever they're doing. I'm always like, just that person's having a really hard day. And sometimes it's easier to do than others. I've experienced that, like, the more you do it, the more your brain just goes to it. So that what
Yeah.
you're talking about, that habit of building. And I don't do it in other areas of my life, right? That's just like a really easy, powerful one that I see. But I notice how you can do it in all aspects of your life to give yourself that power, that responsibility over your own experience.
Yeah. What you're pointing to is really powerful because what it highlights is at the end of the day, we are nothing but a set of practices. The problem is we get really practice at certain things. We get practice at avoiding. We get practice at being grumpy and in a bad mood. And sometimes those practices get so ingrained that it actually gets collapsed into our personality. And so now you think that you're this grumpy person. You're just practice at being grumpy or you're just practice at avoiding. The moment you start to develop practices that are different, you do those enough and those will become your new practices. You know, the perfect example is the morning practices. I used to get up and just go on my day and start reacting. That was my practice. All of a sudden, I grab my phone. I'm like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Now it's like I take a morning. The first hour is for me to just be with me, to journal. But that took like a year and a half to like really get down because I kept going off. I kept fighting. I kept shortening it. I kept skipping it. I kept, but you do it. You stick with it. You stick with it. We're all a set of practices. Our personalities are just a set of practices. So the moment you start to bring in a new practice and you stick with it for over time, well, guess what? Now you have a new practice. Now you have the practice of giving people the benefit of the doubt and experiencing the freedom that comes with that.
Yeah. And when you give people the benefit of the doubt, like as an example, maybe that person is just an asshole. Like maybe nothing happened. I mean, I've come to believe there's always a reason that someone's an asshole, like even if it's not something that happened that day, right? But it doesn't matter because your experience of it is what matters.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's,
Yeah. I'm of the mindset that I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and goes, whoo, I can't wait to be an asshole today. Like,
Exactly.
I don't think anybody does that.
No.
But, some people are practiced, right?
Right.
But even if you take the case that they are an asshole, what does that have to do with you and your experience and how you experience life? Like, it has nothing. And in that you think that because this person's an asshole, you have to be at the impact of that. That's on you. Like, that's your work. Right? Like no, you don't. Like anybody can do whatever they want outside of there. Always have power over unless you're physically putting your hands on me in some way, I always
Right.
have power over how I choose to interpret that. So that's on you. That's what you get to take ownership over.
That's so good. And, going back to your examples of how it relates to being an entrepreneur, it's like every moment of being an entrepreneur is a challenge, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And how are you interpreting every single thing that's happening? Because you're going to be challenged all the time. You're going to have to do things that you don't want to do. You're going to have things happen that you don't want to happen. And what are you then, I think you said before, like, what's the story you're putting around this thing that just happened? And then how are you doubling down on maybe a negative habit that you have about that story or that experience that's now carrying into the next thing you're doing, right?
Reinforcing
Reinforcing
it and creating a loop. Yeah.
Right. And now, yeah. And so, it's not simple well, maybe it's simple but not easy. It's like, are you even trying to take those steps? Because that's all you can do is just put one foot in front of the other with this kind of
Yeah,
stuff, right?
100%.
It's you said a year and a half doing that journaling. You weren't failing for a year and a half. You were doing it for a year and a
Building,
half.
yeah.
Yeah, you're building it, and you can't expect to build this habit. Oh yeah, no, I don't want to be like that anymore, and now I'm not going to be like that. That's never how breaking a habit is going to be. But you can be aware and say, I do want to become that person who has that different experience, interprets things differently, shows up with more like hunger to, okay, well, that sucked, but that's okay. It's all learning. Let's keep going, right? Because those are the people that I see winning in entrepreneurship. I don't know about you, but
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's what creates a great culture at work, and it's what creates great relationships in life, by the way.
right, not to mention.
So if you want to take it outside of entrepreneurism, look
Yeah.
at your life, look at your relationships with your family and your friends, your partners, all of that. It's a skill set that will play a role, that has dividends in all those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. That is such a beautiful place to wrap up. Although I have like millions of things I could continue to talk about with you, Gary. You'll just have to come back. Gary, where
I'd
can
love to.
everybody find you?
Yeah, so GaryMontalvo.com. Super complicated. You can also
And
find me on Instagram. It's the same.
yeah,
It's Gary Montalvo.
yeah, you can go check out his podcast.
TheOwnershipGame.com. You can find the podcast there. It's everywhere. Spotify, YouTube, all the places
Very
where you
cool.
can find your podcast is there. Go get it.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much, Gary. Such a
My
pleasure.
pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute joy, and I'd love to be back anytime you want me. Thank you.
Thanks. Awesome.